rainy, and they had started a big fire to help warm these people who had come in from the sea. When the fire began to go down, Paul went to gather a bundle of sticks. This should dispel any notion that Paul was a lazy preacher. He, he himself tells us that he practiced his trade as a tent maker so that he would not be a burden on the church. Obviously, he was not afraid of work. When Paul threw the sticks on the fire, the viper would naturally crawl away from the fire. The viper did not only bite, the viper not only bit Paul, but actually fastened onto his hand. And that concludes that section. Now let's move on to section verses 4 through 6. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hang on his hand, they said among themselves, "No doubt this man is a murderer." Well, he's found out. You remember he was murdering the Christians. Whom, though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. The Greek word here for vengeance is dike. It's either dike or dike, which actually would be better translated justice. And we saw this in the widow who was persistently going to seeking, it says vengeance of the judge, but actually she's seeking justice. Yet justice suffereth not to live. In other words, they felt that Paul was guilty of a great crime, and justice was catching up with him. He had escaped from the sea, but now he would surely die of the venom. Very frankly, I think they sat down to watch what would happen to him. They expected that any moment he would begin to show swelling in his hand and arm, then would fall down dead. They knew by sad experience, as that is what had happened to their own people, they expected this to happen to Paul. Notice that these pagans did not have a sense of justice. They assumed, or they did have a sense of justice. They assumed that Paul was a murderer and that he deserved punishment. In such a circumstance today, folk would be helping the criminals to get back out to the sea to escape being punished. These this incident shows that throughout the Roman Empire there was a sense of justice. Pagan Rome made that contribution to the world. Rome was noted for justice, not mercy. Sins were not forgiven. If you broke the law, you paid the penalty. Under the iron hill of Rome, the world was crying for mercy. This was a preparation for the coming of Christ, who came as the Savior from sin. This mankind might know the mercy of and forgiveness of God. Verse 5, and he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Howbeit they looked when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly, but after they had looked a great while and saw no harm came to him, they changed their mind and said that he was a god. The promise of God in Mark chapter 16, verse 18, was fulfilled in Paul's experience. He suffered no ill effects from the venom. When folk today deliberately pick up snakes and claim that promise as their protection, they are far afield from what God had in mind. When they saw that no harm came to Paul, they decided that he certainly could not be a criminal, but instead a god. Although they were equally as wrong in this judgment, it did have Paul a very important contact on the Isle of Melita here. That ends that section. Now let's